Okay, we've talked about weaknesses in form and training, and a number of you have touched on the mental aspects. With beginning lifters, a lot of it is just confidence in their form and in their strength. But when you get to a higher level, what common things do you see, either in yourselves or in people you work with, a mental thing that they need to overcome when they're competing? Matt, let's start on that side.
I'd say part of it is confidence in, with gear. A lot of times, like if you came in and just bench pressed without putting a bench shirt on, it's hard to put in, it's hard to put 700, 800, 900 pounds, or even in Julia's case, 300 pounds in your hands and train and get better on a weekly basis. So you have to learn to be confident in your gear and be able to, okay, that's tight, that's really tight, that's uncomfortable, but that's where it needs to be. You need to be able to dial that stuff in. So when you get on the platform and you're really uncomfortable and it feels like your head's going to explode, or the knee wraps feel like they're sawing your leg off, hey, that's where it needs to be. And then you can shut that off, and then you can go and focus on your technique and your lift. That's one of the the big things I think. The other thing is, I'm a big believer in like stress management. A lot of times, life is a big problem. If you look at some of the best lifters around, their stress management's very good. Whether it's the profession that they've chose or the relationships that they have, they kind of manage that life stress so their training can be optimal. I mean, you look at Dave and the stress that he goes through, and I can only imagine like how it affects his training at certain times of the year, especially going into the holidays now of, hey, we got to take time off or we got to do whatever. So being able to manage, everything else that's going on, like Dave said, balance the unbalanced, and then be able to manage your stress and your eating and your food and your relationships and all that stuff, but still find the time that you can put into the gym. But as far as in the gym part, I think being confident in what you do, trusting your training, even though at 5 weeks out, 4 weeks out, you're going to feel like you're going to be destroyed, and you're like, I have no confidence right now of what I could do at the meet, because you're kind of, that's the hardest part of your training. But knowing that, okay, that 3 week swing into the meet, you're going to feel like a different person.
Julia?
I was actually just going to touch on that same thing. I think when you get to this level, or even for a beginner or intermediate lifter, and you see the beginning level, a lot of guys will, do a certain program for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and then, shut it down, it didn't work or whatever. So I think when you get to a point to where, being confident in your training, you have to believe in what you're doing. Just because Adam and I may train differently doesn't mean that one is right or one is wrong. They both work, and they're both getting us to where we need to be, but you have to believe in what you're doing. When it comes to meet day, you kind of have to have that same sense in the back of your mind. And I said this to one of my friends the other day. We were talking about, taking like max lifts and things. And I said, you versus the iron is an attitude that you have to learn, because as soon as you step on the platform, now it's not about, what happened this week at work. It's not about, it's you versus the iron. And I mean, I think we're all at that stage, and we're at that point for a reason, because we've conquered that. And it's an attitude that I think is a learned thing. A beginner or an intermediate, when they walk up to a max squat, it's a very, they don't have that yet. And I think it's something that can be trained and learned. So as soon, when meet day comes, it's having the confidence of just going on the platform and knowing that you did what you needed to do for that training cycle, and then, putting it to work.
Adam?
For me, it's long-term adversity. I went through a period, I bombed 4 or 5 meets, and then it took me 18 months to get back to the platform. And, there were lots of months in there where I just thought, what am I doing? This is ridiculous.
You didn't just think that.
Right, so, I took a look at what I was doing, and, I had to reprogram some things and do some things different to finally get back to where I'm at now. But, there were times when, I thought that it's not going to happen, that I'm done. I've done all I can do. But at some point, you got to look at what you're doing in the gym, and, I have some little success here and little success here and a little bit over here. And, and ask myself, can I still do this? And can I put these little successes together into coming back to the platform and doing better than I have before? And, so at some point, if you're going to be in the sport long term, you're going to have to learn how to deal with a long-term adversity.
Can I touch a little bit on what Adam said? And I kind of wanted to mention that I think sometimes a lot of lifters will go to meets and just like, Dave said, try to, 300-pound PR, every meet that they go to. And something that, that Matt and I do with my training and the meets that I go to is that we're looking for the little successes. So for me at this meet, I'm not trying to put 200 pounds on my total from last time. I'm trying to hit the small PRs. It's been years since I've actually had a decent bench in a meet. So that's a small goal. And to put up, so it's all the little pieces together. And then the next meet that comes along, whether it's the Arnold or some big meet, then you start to go, okay, let's push a little bit more. But I think sometimes people just try to just jump in head first, full go, and then what? Yeah. Then you don't even know what to fix. You don't know what went wrong. And so now it's like, depending on what happens tomorrow, we can go back and go, here's what worked, here's what didn't. That's you right. 10-pound PR'd here, you 50-pound PR'd here. Now let's, go back to the drawing board and
build
do that.
Upon it.
Right, rather than trying to, open up with a PR and now you don't even know what you've done wrong. So, anyways, go ahead, Brian.
Okay, Brian.
Okay. The question was mental state of an advanced lifter. I know you kind of drifted a little bit. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Before we hit that, I was about to explode because I wanted to say a couple things. But the biggest thing, he hit on it, he started it. I think, in my opinion, again, sometimes they're strong, you might not agree with it, but I think the worst thing for a beginner lifter is to have immediate success. And that is because they get spoiled. And they expect a 300-pound PR. We had a guy, his first meet out, went 9 for 9, 75-pound PR on the deadlift over what he's hit in the gym, or in the meet for the deadlift. Just killed everything he touched. His next 2 meets after that, he's went 3 for 9. Because he had in his mind that, that meet went so great, it's going to happen like this. And then when it started to not happen in training and he missed a lift in the meet, he crumbled mentally. Nothing there. He wanted to quit. Actually, he literally wanted to.
The last meet he did quit.
Yeah.
But to go back what she was saying too, and to add on to, he did get a small PR on the bench.
And the deadlift. The squat and the deadlift.
But that wasn't enough.
That wasn't enough for him.
I mean,
yeah.
You got to take them small successes if you're going to last.
Absolutely.
And be happy with those small ones. Because, he still had two small PRs there, and he was not happy with that. And it's just amazing.
Just spoiled. I mean, how many times are you going to go 9 for 9 in your career, Dave? Maybe 3 times?
I did once.
Twice.
I've only done
competed
it
over
once.
100 times.
He actually remembers how many
Twice.
he's done.
Yeah. So a
And
couple
both
times.
days I left way too much on the platform, which means I sucked.
So
But you're right. You're all right. Yeah.
So 1 out of 50 times you're going to do it.
Yeah.
2 out of 100.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you're a pussy, you just call light numbers, but then you're not pushing yourself. So
So you might miss a couple thirds here and there. When I think of the things that I the mental side of it for me is, again, some people might think this is a little too conservative, but the mental side of it for me is being confident in my lifts, not being scared of anything, but then knowing the difference between, okay, that hurt or am I injured? Should I keep going up? Where am I at in my training? Am I 3 weeks out from a meet? Am I 6 months out from a meet? Like I would be now, I am now. I'm relatively 4 months out from a meet. If I feel something's off now, what am I going to gain by pushing it? Am I just going to say to myself, I'm just being a sissy. I should really go push it. Or, you got to kind of determine in your mind, okay, am I listening to my body or am I listening to my ego? And you got to decide, okay, am I injured or am I just a little banged up? I can push through it. And then at the same time, I still get a little scared of weight sometimes. I'm not going to walk away from it and not do it, but still in my mind, I'm scared. Oh man, I can't let this beat me. You know, I got to get under it. It's a good fear. It's like an adrenaline, you know, fight or flight. And, you know, you get under there, you have that fear, you know, everything's got to be right. And I think that pushes some people, it'll scare them away. And some people it'll make, you know, make them thrive. And, you know, I've succumbed to being scared before and not giving it everything I had. But I think that's part of growing as a lifter and knowing, okay, yes, you need to respect the weight, but at the same time, that little bit of fear is good. You just can't let it get the best of you. And that's the balance of being a mentally strong lifter, but not being an idiot either. You know, if you feel like your knee's going to blow out, then maybe you should shut it down for the day. Now, maybe something's a little tight or a little sore. Know the difference, and that comes from, you know, knowing your body from the inside, knowing how it's feeling, you know, warming up, and then differentiating. Are you being a little sissy boy, or are you really, you know, about to hurt something? And that's something that, you know, I try to tell my people. I'll look at their video, you know, and I'll be like, what was that? You know, why did you cut that squat? You know, oh, you know, I thought, you know, I was going to pass out, or, you know, that felt really heavy. Well, it came up, and then you went up another 50 pounds and crushed it too. What's the reason you did that? And it was in their head. They're, you know, mentally weak. And I try to tell them, you got to keep, you know, people accountable, but at the same time, you got to realize there's some people that will just cave when you push them too much, and then some people, when you prod them a little bit, they'll excel and they'll pick it up a little bit. So for me, it's just having that balance of listening to my body and having a little bit of fear, but a good fear of failing. But at the same time, a fear of, okay, if I do something stupid here, this could be it for me forever, you know, for lifting, blowing a knee or a shoulder bad enough or whatever. So that's the kind of mindset I have. And some people would say, no, you shouldn't have any fear of weight. Well, I mean, I have a healthy fear of it, I think, you know, and I'm realistic with my numbers. And that goes in too. I know I'm not going to compete in March and hit, you know, a 300-pound PR total after I've been lifting for 10 years. But I'll be happy with a little bit of PRs here and there and build upon it.
Dave?
I'm going to touch on three aspects here. The first with Brian is I think that you should be afraid of the weights. You know, if you're afraid of the weights, and anybody that says that they're, you know, not scared of the weights, they're either lying or they're not lifting heavy enough. You can turn that fear into aggression and that aggression into a made lift. Some of the fastest benches I ever made were after I had my pec tendon reattached. First meet out, I was scared to death, man. I took the bar out of the rack, racked it, and I was done. You know, then obviously, you know, you're being at Westside, so you go to dinner that night and you're just razzed. I don't even want to get into that. It was not a good dinner. I told myself, never fucking again is this going to happen. So I just flipped it on myself, and I realized, you know what? I got to use this fear to my advantage. So for every bench after that, as soon as I was called up, I started visualizing myself taking the bar out, breaking my elbows, both pecs tearing, and the bar smashing my face and blowing my head all to hell. I built the fear up so bad that I was shaking fucking pissed. And as soon as I grabbed it and broke it down, all I wanted was the fucking bar off of me as fast as I possibly could. So I put myself in the absolute worst possible mental state I could possibly be in, because I'm not gonna not do it. All right, I'm gonna do it. All right, so I just figured, fuck it. If I picture the worst thing and something bad happens, I'm already ready for my head to be split in two. So what if I tear a pec? But with each time, every single press I did from that point up was probably faster than anybody else's in any meet, you know, at the time. So I kind of learned how to embrace it. Over a period of time, it stopped working, you know, because it's, you know, confidence builds and other things builds too. But I think people coming back from injuries need to find that way, not maybe the way I did, but some way to kind of embrace that. So they're not timid, because if you're timid, you're going to favor a side and then you're really going to get hurt. I mean, you just got to kind of go at it. The second thing I want to address is Adam's point about the long-term longevity with adversity. It's not an easy game. You know, I hear these younger guys say, powerlifting's fucking awesome, you know, I love it and all this kind of stuff. It's like, dude, go 5 years without breaking a PR. Tell me how awesome that is.
Beast mode.
Yeah, beast mode and all this other kind of stuff. You know, it's just a very small number of lifters, even advanced lifters, that have really been in the game for longer than 10 years. You know, sometimes just benching or squatting or deadlifting what your best was is a huge accomplishment, especially if you've had to undergo, you know, back surgery, divorce, weight change. You know, there's all kinds of things that can affect life, lifting and everything else. That just getting there, back to where you were, is huge. That requires more. Getting back to where you were requires a hell of a lot more than being strong and getting a 20-pound PR, because you're essentially starting all over again in a different body, because your body's working differently because of the injuries or whatnot. The original question of where do advanced lifters screw up on meet day? To me, that's simple. They screw up by listening to themselves. You know, it's granted not everybody is going to be able to go to a meet and have a coach. Sometimes they got to pull together coaches from other people and all this other stuff. In an optimal situation, if you are an advanced lifter, you should be going to a meet with a group of guys that you train with, or somebody who's been working with you, watching videos and so forth. When you walk in the meet that day, you're gone. You're just a robot there to lift weights and do what you're told to do. That's it. Somebody else should be, you can do your warm-ups and all that, you're gonna have your game plan, but as soon as you get out on the platform and you hit your opener, at that point on, those calls from that are gonna be coming from somebody else. You can't, on meet day, you can't mentally call your own numbers, because you're not even mentally there. You're in a different state of awareness. So anything that you think is real isn't. What you think is easy might not be easy. What you think is hard might be easy. Hell, the way you remember your training cycle on meet day is completely fucking different than if you asked any of the people you trained with. You can say, well, how'd your cycle go? Fucking awesome. Then I ask him, you know, how did cycle go? Dude, he was beat up the whole fucking time. So you can't even trust your own memories of your training cycle, let alone you're going to sit there and say, man, I smoked the opener, give me 75 pounds. You got to turn that over to somebody that you trust, that really does care that you're going to walk away with the best possible day you can. That's not to say, you know, if Brian calls Adam's second attempt and Adam disagrees, Adam doesn't have some input. All right, but that input should always be trumped by whoever the coach is. You know, it shouldn't be the other way around, which happens a lot of times. And inevitably, what happens when it is the other way around, they miss. And then they walk away with an opener, which they could have easily done 30 or 40 pounds more, but instead it decided they needed 75 pounds more. So yeah, gave up those 40 pounds. Well, those 40 pounds add up to 150 pounds on a total before it's over with. So the biggest mistake is listening too much to themselves and not listening to the people that they brought to help them. Listen to that sentence again. They brought to help them. You know, so since they're there to help them, let them do their job. You know, that way you can do your job. And for some people, they may have over-arousal. You know, they're too fired up for the meet, so they may need more than one person. You know, I needed one person just to keep me settled down, and another person just to make sure that the numbers were they were supposed to, and a third person just to make sure everything was going to be technically sound. If I didn't have 3 people watching out for me, I was going to fuck myself up. It happened all the time, you know, and then I'm mad at them. You know, I don't, of course it's not my fault. You know, it's like, where the fuck was Bob? That's why I missed this, you know, but that's the answer to that one.
Can I hit on 2 points?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
When he says, you know, having your coaches there, have someone there that trains with you, that knows you. Like you said, they knew what you looked like. Your training partners know if you had a crappy cycle, a great cycle, if you've been smashing weight, getting smashed by weight. Why make things harder than it should be by getting people that are not familiar with the way you like your knees wrapped, the way you like your straps pulled, your handoffs, you know, some, you know, Yahoo calling your numbers, screwing your day up that you've been training for 3 or 4 months.
That might be the most important aspect of meet day. Having the right person there to help.
Yeah, it's huge. And you see all the time. I mean, I understand stuff happens. Sometimes you won't have the people there you want, but you need to keep everything as close to what you're familiar with, and don't change stuff. Yes, sometimes the shirt will blow out, or you know, you'll get hurried and have to skip some warm-ups, but everything you can control, which is paying for people, whatever you have to do, get them there. You can control that, you know, within reason. Get them there and you know, control what you can control, and that's who's handling you and, you know, coaching you.
And to one other point to add with that is, you know, a lot of, because I've handled a lot of lifters over the years, a lot of very, very good lifters over the years, and you have to have confidence in what you're doing. You know, if you call a number for a lifter and they miss it, it's not necessarily your fault. He's not going to blame it on you, thinking it's your fault. So you gotta be able to take the responsibility, but you gotta understand they still have their responsibility too. So, you know, I've called a lot of people up in the squat that, you know, I thought were good squats, but they got red lighted. You know, so as the lifter, you can't go blaming your coach for something that they did when their best interest was actually you, and make your coach your scapegoat for whatever it is. It's just, it's got to be, as Brian said, a good relationship going into it. Otherwise, you know, shit can happen and it's not going to end up being good.
Yeah, be realistic. They're human. They could call you up early, you know,
Or
mess
late,
your numbers
you
up,
know.
you know, well, yeah, bury you or whatever. I mean, you just got to understand they're human.